All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Housing and Residential Education this evening, where we have myself as your moderator, joined by a few of my colleagues who will be introducing themselves momentarily. Tonight, we will be providing an overview on the 2022-2023 academic year waitlist and answering questions that were pre-submitted to us. So without further ado, my name is Des Sandoval. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I work as an assistant director within the Department of Housing and Residential Education here at the University of Utah. Now I will turn it over to my colleague Laura to introduce herself.
Thanks, Des. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Tanager. I go by she, her, hers, and I'm the associate director for operations. So I work with our assignments and our occupancy teams. So I'm looking forward to answering questions from you all tonight. I'll turn things over to Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Rachel Aho. I use she, her pronouns, and I work as the Director of Housing. I'm really grateful that you're joining us tonight and want to just also extend an additional congratulations on your admission to the University of Utah. We know this is a really exciting time. With that, I'll turn it over to Sean.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Grube. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Executive Director of Housing and Residence Education here at the U. I have been here for a whopping 6 weeks at this point. So, I know all the things, but jokes aside, I have spent my entire career in housing and residence education. From literally the day I started college working at the front desk to what I'm doing now. And so I know how incredibly important the on-campus experience is. While I like to have fun in my work, I also take this work really, really seriously. And so I know there's lots of questions about our waitlist process. And so we're going to go through those tonight and try and be as transparent as we can. So there were over 200 pre-submitted questions. So we've tried to kind of group those together so that they can answer as many questions as possible for everyone. But again, as I said, I'm just grateful that everyone is here with us tonight and look forward to spend the next hour with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean, for that introduction. Everyone, now what we'll do is briefly run through a slide deck, which will just cover really like the top points of note regarding our academic year waitlist and really going over the next steps. So with that, I will turn it back over to Laura Tanager to run us through that.
All right, thank you. So there are two things that we want you to walk away with when you think about the waitlist. So we'll talk about those two groups. The first one is for folks that applied for housing by our April 1 priority deadline. This slide is for you. So this means you applied by April 1, you weren't able to reserve a room, you don't have a booking. And so you need to know that you are already on the waitlist. We automatically added you. Your place on the waitlist is randomized. That is in the same order that, or the same way that we order people as we do for selecting time slots for room selection. So what will happen next is you're going to be prioritized before any students who applied after our April 1 priority deadline. So what we want to do next is as we go through and we have rooms become available, we want to notify you of what those spaces are. We'll do that via email. So make sure that you check your university email, especially for first year students. We know sometimes that's not always set up yet. So we do also send to your preferred or alternative email. So make sure that you list that as well, or if you have any updates to that account, you can let us know and we can make sure that that is updated. When you get an email from us and it says, congratulations, you're at the top of the wait list, what we're going to do is give you instructions to go in and select one of the available rooms. So we notify students of this open housing, the instructions will be in that email, and you'll have 72 hours from the start of that email to log in to the Housing U portal, Finish your application if you've not done that already, and pay that $200 reservation fee once you select an available room. So when you log in, it's going to look very similar for those of you that went into room selection and something's available. You're going to see that open room, you select it, click next, you check out, you pay that $200 reservation fee, and then you are set for fall. What you want to know is that we're going to start making offers this month in April. We're hoping to do that very soon, within the next week. And what we're going to do is continue sending those through fall. So anytime that we have an open room, that is going to move to the wait list. The next thing to know is for those of you that applied after April 1st. So if you're on the wait list and you applied after that April 1 priority deadline, you are automatically routed to the wait list rather than the full housing application. Your place on the wait list is determined by when you submitted that join, or when you submitted that wait list sign up. So HRE, again, notify students of open rooms. We're going to send you those instructions in your Umail account as well as to your preferred email. And you'll also have 72 hours that you would log into Housing U and then select that room and then pay a $200 reservation fee to finalize your space. Then you would be all set for the fall. And again, we're going to start sending waitlist offers starting in April with the group of folks that applied by the April 1 priority deadline, and then continuing for folks that were applying after April 1. So we know we've gotten a lot of questions about how are the waitlist offers handled? What does prioritization look like? So we wanted to give some information about that as well. First, we're starting those waitlist offers next week, the 25th. The waitlist is also just a general waitlist for anyone who doesn't have housing. We don't have specific waitlists for a living learning community or theme community. We don't have waitlists based on room type or by building or area of campus. Our ultimate goal is to make sure that we house as many students as possible, and we are more able to do that when we can keep our list broad and not be too specific with that wait list. The way that we do categorize a wait list is based on your classification or your class year and the gender for housing. So when you filled out either the housing application or the wait list and you completed that information, we know what class year or classification you are based on your admission status, but we also asked you what gender for housing do you want? And their choices were either a male room, a female room, or a gender inclusive space. So based on those choices, that's how we would categorize. So if I have available rooms for a first year student who's looking for a female room, that's the wait list that we keep. So if you have any updates, or let's say you're a transfer student, you get your credits rolled in and your classification changes from a first year student to a non-first year student, again, that's something that our team will be running for updates, but please feel welcome to contact our office so that we can make sure your record is as up to date as possible. We also want to make sure that you all know that we prioritize people on the wait list based on if you have a housing scholarship, based on what your place of residence is. So for international students and out-of-state students, we recognize that your opportunities to live locally are not as ample for some of our in-state students. And then we also look at the waitlist registration date. So when we prioritize groups, we'll talk about those areas. Prioritization also takes place within calendar groupings. So for people who applied after the April 1 deadline, because we use the timestamp of your joining the waitlist as the prioritization for your order, know that we're going to look in like a 2-week period. So if we have people within that 2-week period from April 1st to April 15th, April 2nd to April 15th, then we would essentially take everyone within that 2-week period and we'd say, okay, where are prioritized groups? Folks that are coming from international student status or coming from out of state, those folks would be prioritized in that 2-week grouping. But that means essentially that if I apply on April 2nd, and Rachel applies on May 15th. If Rachel is an out-of-state student and I'm in-state, just because Rachel applied later than I did, but she has a prioritization group that I don't, that doesn't mean that she pops up ahead of me on the wait list because I'm still within that 2-week grouping. So we're prioritizing, but we're also trying to be as cognizant or aware of those time slots as possible. And again, you've heard this, but when students reach the top of the wait list, we're giving those students 72 hours to log into the portal, select a room, and make sure that you pay the reservation fee. It's important to know this because we don't assign specific rooms to students. So it really does require the student to go in, select that space, pay for the reservation fee so that they're set for fall. Now, again, the last steps, once you are offered the ability to go in and select a room, we need to make sure that you know a few things. One, when you select that room and you check out with it, that booking is a tentative booking, which means that you have to pay that $200 reservation fee for us to know that you're coming. That $200 reservation fee is essentially an advance on the total cost of the room. It's not a deposit. It's something that we're just getting that initial $200 as a signal that you intend on coming and we should hold that room for you for fall. We also want you to sign up for new student orientation and begin reaching out to your roommates. The vast majority of students that we see that are on the wait list, we do see some really great matches and some really great relationships. We also know that people have questions about like, can I get specific people to live with? But we really want to encourage you to reach out to the roommates that you have and start those conversations and get ready for arrival. We want to make sure too that you're checking your email for important information. It's not just housing that's going to be sending you information over the summer. There are going to be lots of informational pieces coming from the U, and we want to make sure that you go through those emails. And then finally, we have move-in days in August. So we have multiple move-in days. We do that to help control traffic and help people have a really good experience and that we don't bog down elevators and parking lots. So we'll assign a move-in day to you, either the 16th, 17th, or 18th, and we'll also ask you to aim for a certain time. And that is all the information that I have about our waitlist process before we get to questions. So I'm going to turn things back over to Tess. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura, for walking all of us through that. That was a ton of great information. So without further ado, we will hop into the Q&A component of our live session today. As Sean mentioned, we had just about 200 questions or over 200 questions come in. So if we're not able to answer any of your questions here today, please know that you can still reach out to us. We are open Monday through Friday, between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. via phone and email. If you're local, you can also come in and step into our office and we can help you in person as well. So with that, our first question here is, I received an email about being put on the wait list. However, my account shows that I reserved a room. Why am I getting an email about the wait list? Sean, would you be able to maybe answer this question for us?
Have you all ever had a really bad day? Because that's what happened to us. So I need to just start out our conversation and apologize. So we had an error in our email list, essentially. And so it sent it out to folks on the wait list, but also people that have reserved. I think all four of us that are on this Zoom were talking late that night once we figured out that had happened, and the team got a correction email sent. So you should have received a correction email that said that the first email was an error. So again, my apologies on that. We want to make sure that we're communicating the correct information, but you can verify your reservation in the U Housing portal, and that's the best way to ensure. And I know we had a lot of questions about that. So again, my apologies on this, but if you did reserve a spot, you paid your reservation fee, you should be able to view all that information in your U Housing portal. And then if you have any questions, please reach out to our office so we can answer those for you.
Thank you, Sean. I think we've all been there, had bad days, and had our tech not work the way that we want it to. So thank you for providing that thorough response. Our next question here for Rachel, I think this would be a great question for you. Rachel, would you be able to answer this? I've heard housing filled up faster this year. Is this true?
Thanks, Des, for that question. This is true. So this year we did see an incredible demand for housing, and this was due in large part due to the amount of interest that we saw in folks coming and attending the University of Utah. And so while we're really excited to be a part of a growing campus and agree that the University of Utah is an amazing institution, we also know that this can result in experiences such as living on campus filling up faster than usual. As a department, we have worked with our campus partners and within our department to increase housing availability over the past few years, including for this upcoming year, adding additional beds on campus, and we will continue to plan for future housing over the upcoming years, as well as it's our goal to be able to house as many students as want to live on campus each and every year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. Our next question looks like, I know the housing process opened on February 10th. I applied right away and still didn't get housing. Why is that? Laura, would you be able to maybe speak on behalf of why that might be?
Yeah, absolutely. This is, really hard because we know that there are a lot of folks that can apply early, and so they apply as soon as the housing application opens. And it's really disheartening to feel like you've done everything right or you've done everything by the instructions and you still don't get housing. So I think what I would like to do is just explain a little bit about what that looks like for us when we get applications. So we get everyone's applications in all by our priority deadlines. So for living and learning and themed communities, folks needed to apply by March 10th. And then for our traditional communities, people needed to apply by April 1st. When we get those applications in, and this is pretty typical for HRE and for the U over the past several years, we will get more applications than we have housing, but people are still making decisions about the U or if they want to live on campus. So we randomize the time slots or the order that people are able to go in and try to select a room. And that's what we've continued to do. Both as an effort to recognize that there are folks that come in U admissions decisions a little bit later, or they're not part of early admissions group, or maybe they don't even have the information they need to think about housing until a little bit later. So that's why we randomize those time slots. HRE doesn't take your application date into account, and so that's why you'll hear or see that some of our students that applied even early, they might have just gotten that random time slot that was a little bit later in the process after we filled. One thing to recognize too, though, is that since we have so many folks that are interested in housing this year, we didn't want to make any extra steps for you if you didn't get housing. We know that if you applied, you were interested in housing. And so we automatically rolled you over to the wait list. There was no extra action needed by students in order to do that. So that's something to be aware of for folks, is that A, you didn't have to do an extra step, but B, the other thing is that we have this new process of making sure people are added to the wait list, and that we try to prioritize folks that met those priority deadlines, and that we want to make sure that we're moving through that list really quickly. And hopefully that's helpful information when you're thinking about all the things you need to do in order to begin your arrival at the U.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. I know that provided a lot of insight into why that process is that way for me, so thank you. Our next question here is around the priority deadline. So what does the priority deadline mean if I applied by the deadline, but I'm still on the wait list? Sean, would you be able to potentially speak on behalf of this question?
Yeah, absolutely. So the priority deadline, I think some folks have taken to mean that if I apply by a certain date, then that means a guarantee of housing. And that's not what the priority deadline is for. It's for us to encourage those early applications so we can begin the room reservation process. But it hasn't ever been a guarantee. A lot of the questions that have come in, and I know it's one that our office probably gets most frequently, is how big is the wait list and where am I on the wait list to? And I promised you tonight that we would be transparent. And so I want to give you that information. But I also want to provide some caveats for this too. This is a very loose number because we know that there are people on this wait list who have chosen not to commit to the U. And so we will see a lot of fluctuation over the coming days and the coming weeks. But to be very specific, so on our priority wait list, we have 2,713 people. So those are folks that applied before April 1st. And then we have 475 people on the wait list that applied after April 1st. Now, again, I get that is a big, scary number, but I again, want to kind of put that up with a little bit of caution. So, last year we moved over 1,100 students off the wait list into housing. Now that happens after move-in and before move-in and from now until move-in. And so, we will provide updates on our housing website every couple of weeks as we start to kind of solidify who still wants to remain on the wait list, et cetera. Do have a process in place for that. So, but again, I do want to be transparent with where our numbers are. And so that is a large number. I think we can count on having more students that desire housing than we are going to have room for. But I also believe we're going to move a considerable number of people off of the wait list into our housing. And again, I think over the next couple of weeks, those things will firm up considerably.
Thank you so much, Sean. And you alluded to this just a bit, but it is a nice segue into our next question here. Why isn't housing guaranteed like it is at other campuses? Rachel, perhaps you might be able to answer this question.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer this question. So as you can tell by our application numbers, right, there's a lot of interest in on-campus housing at the U, which is really exciting. But unfortunately, the University of Utah is unable to guarantee student housing on campus simply because we don't have enough residential space on campus to do so. We wish that we were able to do that, and we are taking great strides to increase student housing here at the University of Utah as fast as we can. But we do work very hard to be transparent with students throughout our application process, letting them know that housing is not guaranteed on campus. And that's true for all students, no matter their academic area of study or affiliation. But what we do to make sure that we can ensure that we house as many students as possible is we work to maximize our current occupancy on campus. And now our team's really, as we've alluded to, turning our attention to placing as many students as possible off of our wait list. So we're excited about our future as well. We are actively planning to build and grow housing on campus, which is exciting and something that our incoming students will notice during their time at the U, as well as a couple of those projects will open as soon as next fall.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And I think our next question maybe is, you alluded to this a little bit as well there. With the lack of housing on campus, do we assign freshmen and upper class students together in the same housing or the same room? Laura, would you be able to speak on behalf of this question?
Absolutely, and this is a great question. We know this looks different at various campuses. Within the U, we do designate first-year housing buildings and upper division or non-first-year buildings. There are very few and specific living learning communities that might have like mixed classification, but the number of spaces there are pretty small. So the vast majority of our housing is specific for upper division students and separately for first year students. And we designate separate classifications for these different areas because that helps ensure healthy living environments for everyone. We know that needs are very different for a first-year student compared to an upper division student. We also want to make sure that when people are thinking about being on campus and what their environment might look like, you should expect to be in a community with people that are either first year like you or upper division student like you. Again, there are very few beds that might have mixed classification or mixed class years.
Thanks, Laura. Our next question, it sounds pretty similar to this. Maybe Sean, you might be able to answer this. What is the university doing to help solve this housing shortage?
Yeah, thank you, Des. Yeah, I think what I would like to convey is everything we possibly can. And so that includes solutions both on and off campus. So let me tell you about a couple of those projects. So we have roughly 1,150 beds that are in development. So that for folks that are familiar with our campus tours, that includes the fourth wing of Collard Village, or KB, which will start this summer, will be built out throughout next year and will open for fall of 23. And then we also have a new project that's coming online for fall of 24. That's scheduled to have about approximately 700 beds. And that is the epicenter, the impact center. And this was one of the projects that President Randall actually referred to a couple of weeks ago in his inauguration. So those are the two on-campus projects that I can announce right now. I can tell you that there are also conversations about additional on-campus projects, but those are still kind of more in that development stages. I think everyone is probably aware, building right now is exceptionally difficult, especially coming in on budget and some of those things. And so our team is working hard, but we know on campus, we need to develop strategies both on and off campus. So, we do have opportunities that we're looking at off campus. For those individuals that have been looking at the rental market, that's as competitive as it is on campus right now. But we do have some wonderful folks at the U who are actually working on developing a couple of those projects right now. And so I'm not going to make any promises whatsoever, but I can tell you that we are working with off-campus partners to try and secure potential additional housing. If and when that happens, then we will be able to again, kind of accelerate some of those moves off the wait list. That is just not a near-term solution, but it is something that we'll explore as we continue to grow and as we continue to see investment in the U and everything that we bring for students. So to summarize, both on and off campus options are things that we're looking at. So we are trying to be as creative as possible to house as many students as possible.
Thanks so much, Sean. So you talked about some of our new projects that are up and coming, with that first one opening next fall 2023. And then you also talked about some off-campus options as well. And I think that lands perfectly into this next question that we received. Where do I live if I don't have a dorm? And what is the price difference for a dorm on campus versus living off campus? Rachel, would you be able to answer this question?
Sure thing. Thanks for this question. And I know this is probably one of the primary questions that our office is getting right now too. What are my options? What should I be thinking about? So what I would affirm for you is first, for those of you that applied after April 1st, we would still encourage you to join our wait list if you have not already done so within Housing U. Again, everyone else who applied prior to April 1st, you've automatically been added to the wait list. So that is your best step for putting yourself in the best position to get an offer for on-campus housing. We would also, though, encourage you to begin exploring off-campus housing options too. So what the University of Utah has done to help students explore off-campus housing is we've put together an off-campus housing website. This is a starting place for you to explore options. It is by no means inclusive of every option within the Salt Lake Valley. There are many options to explore, but it's a starting place for students. You can find this website at offcampushousing.utah.edu. So again, that's offcampushousing.utah.edu. On that website, you can explore various properties. You can also sort by features, by number of bedrooms, by price. You can see how close those properties are to public transportation, such as our tracks line, for example. And you can also interact with potential roommates. So if you're looking to find a roommate and would like to live with a roommate, that off-campus housing website offers you the opportunity to chat with roommates and to get to know other students at the U as well. And that's a way, again, that can really help with housing prices and bringing down the price of living off campus. As you might imagine, housing prices off campus vary widely, depending on what property you choose, the location, how many bedrooms are provided, and what amenities are included. That's similar to living on campus too. So we offer a variety of price points on campus as well, depending on those things. So the price of living off campus as a result of that can be both more or less expensive than living on campus, depending on which options you choose. Again, a great way to reduce your cost of off-campus housing is to secure housing with a roommate. And again, you can search for roommates on the off-campus housing website tool. So that's just one resource to get started. A lot of other students begin to explore off-campus housing by using alternative websites as well, such as Zillow or apartments.com. There's a lot of different resources that you can use to begin to see what's out there and explore that. So that's what I would recommend as a starting point.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. Laura, perhaps you might be able to answer our next question here. So we have been told that there is less upper division housing than last year. Why is that? And then we also had problems using the housing system. Did you have IT issues?
Yeah, thanks for those questions, Des. First, in response to the question about, is there less upper class housing than last year? The answer is yes. So as we prepare to work with our colleagues across campus for a bigger new student class coming in, the vast majority of those students are first-year students. We also know that most first-year students do need on-campus housing. Either that is just by need of age, that's not as easy to secure a lease, or if that's just because it's their first year at the U and they need that, that resource that typically a second year or beyond student has a little bit more resources as far as what's available in the community, or they're old enough or they have the ability to get that lease on their own. So that's something that our department's done in collaboration with other areas of campus and preparing for this new incoming class. As far as questions around using the housing system, I would say that the main thing that we saw was on February 10th when our application opened. So we had such incredibly high traffic that we have not seen in any year previous that that did cause a load on our website or on the portal where people were logging in. That did result in some difficulties for people viewing the application, completing their application. That did subside. So as people finished their application and got out, the load or the traffic amount on that site diminished. And so people were able to finish their applications. And I just want to remind folks that we don't use the timestamp of when you applied as a criteria of how you might get placed in order of like getting housing. So someone who applied on February 10th had the same likelihood of getting a time slot, you know, the very first time slot as someone who applied, you know, on the last day of the April 1 deadline. So I think those are the things that we've seen the most. I would say too, like within folks that went into room selection when there were high amounts of people in there, we'd see a few reports of things coming in where people were seeing things that weren't quite what they were expecting, but usually again, that was related to just the sheer amount of people in the system. We would encourage people, if they see something that they don't feel is quite right, or they have questions about what they're seeing, please give us a call and we're happy to help out with whatever you're seeing and try to either help you resolve the issue or make sure that we give you some answers about what you're seeing. Thank you, Des. Appreciate the question.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate the answer. Let's see here. So it looks like our next question is in regard to some living, learning, or theme communities. Sean, you may be able to answer this question. Will honors students who applied to live in the Marriott Honors Community, or the MHC, also be on the wait list for traditional housing or just honors housing?
Yeah, good question. So I think there's lots of questions, people that did apply for some of those specialized communities. Is that the only thing I'm eligible for on the wait list, or am I eligible for lots of stuff? And the answer is the last. You're eligible for everything you're eligible for. So if you are in the Marriott Honors Community, you're not just restricted to a space that's going to come up over there. You're restricted to, or you're unrestricted to any space. So any space that you could move into by your classification, your room type, male, female, or gender inclusive, that's what you're going to be able to see. So I don't want you to be worried that, because you were eligible for the MHC, that's the only building that you could get into. Your eligibility expands to entire campus. So again, our mission, our goal is to provide housing to as many people as we can. And that is why we kind of open the wait list for really any available housing on campus.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sean. And now our next question, I know, is very popular, not only for first-year students, for upper division students as well, and even students who don't live on campus. So Rachel, maybe you might be able to answer this question. What are the different parking permits offered at the University of Utah? And then specifically for those that are living on campus, do you need a car if you are an off-campus student?
A great question. So if you are going to be living with us on campus, so if you get a reservation to live with us and join us on campus, we actually do not recommend that you bring a car to campus if living with us. And in fact, only about 30% of students bring a vehicle to campus. And a large part of that is due to the great transportation system that we have, both on campus and throughout the Salt Lake Valley. Now, if you're living off campus, we do see a higher percentage of students bring a car to campus or a vehicle, and that's about 50 to 60% of students choosing to do that. Again, this is your choice based on your needs, based on where you're living off campus, based on if you have a job that requires you to use a vehicle. Students make different choices there based on their personal circumstances. But I do really want to highlight again that the University of Utah and Salt Lake City offer excellent public transportation options, and those options are free for students as well. So those include a free campus shuttle and free access to Salt Lake City buses and our light rail system, which is TRAX. So I myself lived off campus and commuted to work every day here in housing using TRAX, and that train was full of students coming to campus every morning, getting their last bit of reading in and finishing up that homework assignment on the way to class. So that is a very common way for our students to get to campus and to get around the Salt Lake Valley. A lot of our students also choose to bring bikes and skateboards to campus as well as a way to get around. And if you do, however, choose to bring a car to campus, as the question alluded to, you will need to purchase a parking permit. You can do that through Commuter Services website online, and they offer a variety of permits, again, based on your needs. I will share the most common permit that our students purchase is what's called the U permit. That would be the most common permit for both on-campus housing students and off-campus students. And that gives you a variety of parking options across the campus. Depending on how close you want to be to certain buildings or how far away you're okay walking to classes, that may determine which parking permit you choose to purchase. And you can explore those options again on Commuter Services website.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that great parking overview, Rachel. Now we'll transition a little bit back to more so to on-campus housing again. So Laura, you might be able to answer this next question that we have. Why are students that have not 100% committed to the University of Utah, why are they able to secure or reserve housing?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is a common question we get. Essentially, folks that have committed to the U, if they don't have housing, and you understand that folks that aren't committed yet were able to get housing, that's really frustrating. The reason that we allow people that are not committed to the U to reserve housing is because getting housing helps people commit to the U. So this is something that we've allowed students that are coming to the U once they're admitted. Maybe they haven't committed yet, but they're able to go in and apply for housing, because we know for folks that are either in early application or early admission period, or they just are trying to explore their options, and knowing about housing status at the different universities or colleges they're looking at helps them make a decision. That's why we've offered that. So that's something that I do expect that we'll continue to do, just because we do value the ability for first-year students in particular, and also for our transfer students and other new arrivals to be able to try and secure housing, especially when we're a little bit earlier before our May 1, our first cancellation date for the housing agreement. And that way people can try to get in for housing, or they can go in on the wait list before they have to commit to the U, or before there's any sort of fees other than the application fee associated with canceling. So that's why we have folks that are in housing right now that might not be committed to the U. But as Sean mentioned earlier, we're also getting a lot of updates from admissions. So once we know people have not committed to the U, we're trying to make sure that those folks, if they're not coming to the U, they're not in housing also. So that's part of our cleanup efforts to make sure that we keep that wait list going, and that we keep any open rooms as something that's offered and available to that wait list.
Thanks, Laura. Our next question here, will you refund the application fees for students that are not placed in housing? So if students are on the wait list and are not able to reserve a room, would we be in a position to refund any fees that students had paid? Sean, would you be able to answer this question?
Sure, absolutely. So I mentioned that I've been doing this work for a little while. So I'm closing in on year 26. So I've opened a residence hall more years than I haven't. Let's put it that way. I hope you'll give me a little bit of trust here, but the application fee is one of the ways that we ensure that our occupancy is as tight as possible. And so it's a non-refundable application fee, which is what we advertise it at. The good thing about this is it covers all of your applications to housing at the U. So whether that's your second, third, or fourth year, you pay the application fee one time. But I will just emphasize that this fee is really, really important to help us make sure that the people who are indicating that they're going to attend the U and live in housing, as Laura talked about a few minutes ago, are in fact doing that. I've worked in systems where there's not an application fee, and I can tell you it's a little bit of chaotic stuff. So it is a non-refundable application fee. It does apply for sophomore, junior, senior year as well. So it is not something that you would be recharged, but it is a non-refundable fee.
Great, thank you, Sean. Our next question here, Rachel, you may be able to answer this next one. I am a first-year Utah resident who lives outside of Salt Lake County. I applied before the April 1 deadline, which is our priority deadline, but my reservation time was after housing was full on April 13th. Was my name automatically added to the wait list? And how can I make sure of that?
Great question. Hopefully, based on the information we've shared with you throughout this call, you should be able to deduce the answer to that. So let me review again that if you reserved or if you applied prior to April 1st and you were unable to secure a room during your reservation time, we have automatically added you to the wait list. So the specific answer to this student is yes, you are on our wait list. If you are not able to reserve a room, again, we've got you covered and you've automatically been added to that list. We will begin offering rooms to our waitlist students, as Laura mentioned too, as early as next week. And so I also just want to emphasize once again, make sure to check your email account regularly, as this is where we will be sending those waitlist offers. Now, I'll add as one last caveat, if you are a student on this call right now and you applied after April 1st, you will want to make sure that you've gone into Housing U and have signed up and indicated you would like to be on our wait list. So that is not automatic if you applied after April 1st. But for this particular student, you're all set.
Great, thanks so much. This next question, talking again a little bit about LLCs, specifically Lassonde Studios. Does this wait list include Lassonde? I know I had to complete a second or supplemental application when applying to live there. Laura, would you be able to help us out with this question?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some living learning communities that
Hey, everybody. I think we might have had a little bit of a frozen Laura issue. She's not in the movie, but she's frozen on your screen. So Laura, could you maybe start your answer over again? So I think you kind of froze right when you started to answer the question.
Am I unfrozen now?
You are indeed.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, my internet connection is unstable. Like all of us in the best of times, right? So essentially, our wait list does include Lassonde. Some folks did need to fill out an additional application for different living learning communities. Lassonde is one of those living learning communities where you would have completed an application for Lassonde with the Lassonde Institute, and you would have completed an application with HRE. So with the housing department and with Lassonde. So Lassonde specifically, they do keep a wait list, and our wait list is included in that. So if they have any openings, people that applied through Lassonde and completed that supplemental application, yes, you're on that list. So our partnership with our various offices or departments across campus that have a living learning community, we're always in touch. I would say we're constantly in touch. And letting folks know, like, hey, we've got an extra room. And usually our partners in living learning communities have some folks that they've been working with already, or a community was full, so they have an idea of who might be in there. That being said, I will say that the best place, like if you want to update your interest or you want to make sure you widen your chances for getting into a community, at this point, like our office, the HRE waitlist is the waitlist to be on. So I just want to make sure folks know you don't need to contact Honors, or you don't need to contact Lassonde or various other living learning community or theme community partners to get on their special waitlist. Everything is done through us. If you have questions about their program, absolutely give them a call. But as far as getting priority for housing or making sure that you're on their list, please contact our housing office. We have the staffing that can support the level of questions coming in. Some of our partners that work with our different living learning communities are one person. And so a lot of questions coming in can bog down their email or their voicemail pretty quickly. So please reach out to the main housing office if you have questions about a specific living learning community or a theme community. But again, I think at this point, if folks want to know kind of where they stand or what things are like, we mentioned earlier, you're eligible for what you're eligible for. So if you already have that application done or you already put in your preferences, we take all of that into consideration when open beds become available.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. That was very, very clarifying for me. So I definitely appreciate that thorough response. Our next question here is in regard to meal plans and students who may be living off campus. So are meal plans still included if you live off campus? Maybe Sean, you might be able to answer this for us.
Yeah, so meal plans are not restricted just to those people or those folks that live on campus. So anyone can have a meal plan. So, maybe you're one of those students who is choosing to live off campus, but you're a little bit worried about having to cook for yourself. A meal plan is available for you. So you'll want to check out dineoncampus.com /Utah. I always get the slashes wrong. But dineoncampus.com, let's just say /Utah. I think it'll probably get you there. But that would be how you look at meal plan options. There's a variety of options that are available for you there. So if that's something that you're considering living off campus, but you want either a partial or a full meal plan, just go and check that out. We've got some amazing options on campus. So would just encourage you to really look at that.
Wonderful, thank you. And if you are offered a space on the wait for housing and you're on the wait list for on-campus housing, we also have a variety of on-campus meal plans as well. So we'd also just encourage folks to check that out. And that information is on our website, and that's housing.utah.edu. Let's see. So our next question here, Rachel, I believe you may be able to answer this for us. So if I do get housing, but it's not where I want to live, what is the process for switching, or is that possible?
Yeah, great question. So if you do secure a room as part of a waitlist offer, that will likely be your room for fall semester where you move in. So at this time in our application cycle, it's really difficult to be able to change rooms, mainly because all of our spaces are filled. So there's not a lot of movement. So knowing this, we encourage you to select a room that you're okay living in while evaluating your waitlist offers. As Laura shared again, when you log in, you'll see a few options that you'll get to choose between. So evaluate those options and select the room that is best for you. During the academic year, we do offer the opportunity for students to submit what we call a room change request after the first 2 weeks of the semester. Those requests are processed based on availability. So again, while room changes are not guaranteed, our team does our best throughout the year to honor as many of those as we can. And again, that's based on availability and folks moving around. So room change requests are available during the year, but prior to the year, make sure that you're selecting a room that you are okay living in and that you're excited about joining us in for the fall.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. I think it looks like we have time for just about one more question. So maybe Laura, you might be able to answer this for us. Where do students with housing scholarships fall in line on the wait list? And then a second part to this question, what can be done with the scholarship if no spot in housing is found?
Yeah, happy to answer that. I'll say first that historically we do offer folks with housing scholarships at the U. They have gotten priority room selection times. So the financial aid office sends our housing office information about students who have been awarded, not accepted, but awarded aid, so that we can try and make sure that those students get prioritized room selection times. At this point, with folks on the wait list, we do want to make sure that folks that have those housing scholarships from the U are bumped up or prioritized. So specifically where folks will fall on that, I think that's a little bit harder to answer because we essentially look at where everyone is at and their randomized places if they applied by April 1, or if they applied after April 1. That would be based on timestamp. We essentially take those chunks on the wait list and we break them into small calendar groups, like I talked about at the beginning of our time. So if we look at a small list of students, those that have housing scholarships kind of float to the top of that small segment. And so that way we're keeping in alignment with when folks may have applied to the wait list, But it's not necessarily that everyone with a scholarship floats up to the very top, or everyone who's an international student floats to the top. So again, that's a little hard to answer very specifically at this time, but we're happy to answer questions for folks who have scholarships. I will say we are getting a lot of questions right now. There are a lot of scholarships that are at the U that our housing office has not worked with before. And so it's just great information. If you have a scholarship that covers housing, please let us know. That's helpful information because not everything runs through the financial aid office that has come, to work with us in advance of room selection. People may have been awarded aid more recently than room selection. So any updates like that are really helpful for us to know what your situation is and how we might help you given what your situation is. That being said, there are two numerous of scholarships for me to answer the question about what should someone do with that aid if there's no spot in housing to be found. That scholarship, like the terms of that scholarship, are really specific. So we'd encourage people to go back to whatever department or office or group offered that scholarship and give that question to them to see if, do you still get to keep that aid if it doesn't cover housing because you're not on campus, or does that part of the aid go away? So I hope that's helpful. Again, there's a lot of very situational pieces around scholarships. And again, since there's very few scholarships that cover like all of housing that are just at the U, we are learning more about this and learning more about people's situations, and we're happy to consult as needed.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. All right. So as I mentioned, that will be the last question of our Q&A today. Now I will turn it over to Sean in closing.
Great. Thank you, Des. Well, I'm a very punctual person, so we are going to end on time by 6:30, but just a couple of things. One, I want to say thank you for taking the time to meet with us tonight. These are tough conversations. I know not having housing is something that folks are concerned about. I want you to know that the people that are on this call, as well as the dozens of people who work in our department, we're committed to doing everything we can for you and for all students. We take this job very, very seriously. And so, again, I want to thank you for your time tonight. We've mentioned a couple times there were over 200 questions or nearly 200 questions. So we tried to answer as many questions as possible. But if you have more questions, please email us. The best way to get a hold of us is our housing info email. So that's info@housing.utah.edu. So again, that's info@housing.utah.edu. I will tell you, we do have a large volume of folks that are emailing, but that's the best way for us to get back with you as quickly as possible. Again, I know some of these conversations about the wait list are difficult, but I want to encourage you to be patient and be persistent. We are going to see a large change in the wait list in the next couple of weeks. We will see a lot shift. That's for a variety of reasons. We've gone through some of those tonight, but we are committed to continue to move folks off the wait list, get them in to a permanent spot. That is what we want. That makes us happy. That makes you happy. And so I think if you give some patience to us, you will see these numbers shift pretty dramatically, and we will continue to be transparent about the length of the wait list, how we're moving people along, et cetera. And so we've got our waitlist website that you can go to as well. So it is 6:29 on behalf of everyone that's on this call, everyone at HRE and the University of Utah. I want to say thank you for joining us tonight, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.